Okay, so we're back to characteristics of life, second video here, which I'm going to finish out the 6 remaining characteristics of life. So grows and develops is all goes together. So growth is the addition of mass to an organism. When you form new cells, new structures, like a little sapling growing into a tree, they look nothing alike because they went through a development process. When you add mass, you grow. When you have natural changes that take place, like tadpole to your frog, maggot to your fly, caterpillar to the butterfly, you have metamorphosis occurring, which isn't necessarily always adding a ton of mass, but it is adding mass. So it's growing as it does it, but you can't say that the tadpole grew into a frog. It didn't. It developed while it grew. So that's grow and develop, okay? And all living things grow and develop. Plants, animals, humans grow and develop. Dare I say puberty. This is not a health lesson, so we're not going to get into that, okay? So the next characteristic of life is reproduction. All living things must be able to reproduce and produce fertile offspring. That word clone does not need to be there with the dog there. So reproduction is when you produce more offspring, and it's actually not essential to all living things. So you can't walk around and be like, oh, my grandma, well, that wouldn't make any sense. Oh, that woman there never had kids, so she's not a living thing. She didn't reproduce. That's not the case. So what the case is that the species as an entirety has to be able to make new babies, or extinction will result. Like the dodo bird's not here anymore because they couldn't reproduce. Could you be considered extinct before or near extinction before and still be walking the earth? Sure. So because you don't have any actual breeding couples, okay? And again, don't think humans here. Think like the black rhino, okay? There's 2 types of reproduction, sexual and asexual. Again, with the root words, when you throw a before a word, it means not. So this is not sexual. This is when a single organism produces genetically identical offspring by itself. Lots and lots of clones. They all look the same. Can you think of an example of something that might clone itself? That would be like reproducing and everything's the same. Sexual reproduction is when you have to have 2, usually 2, different genders and they come together, or 2 parent cells unite, and then that makes a genetically different offspring because you have sperm and egg uniting. When I said it's not always 2 different organisms, like worms produce both sperm and egg, and then they come out of the body and unite on the outside and form a little cocoon, and then that cocoon turns into the actual worm. I don't know if you knew that or not. That's why they refer to worms as something called hermaphrodites, which that word always comes up during this lesson, and so I said it. And that just means that you produce both sperm and egg, and that's not humanized there at all, okay? That's a worm thing in our classroom. So species have to be able to breed with one another and then produce fertile offspring. And I don't know if you know this, but like a dog, like a labradoodle, a lab, and a poodle, that's a dog, and that they can breed with one another. A labradoodle can go and have babies with a schnauzer, and you can have a labradoodle schnauzer. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up. And those offspring will be fertile. But does anyone know what this guy is down here? It's a mule, which is the mating of a horse and a donkey. Mules cannot have babies. So we'll get into that in class, okay? So that's reproduction. So far we have cells, DNA, grow and develop, reproduces, okay? So next we have, and I'll get back to that, reacts to a stimulus in its environment. So a stimulus causes a reaction, okay? And the response is a reaction. So you reach for a hot pot and then you scream, ouch. You are reacting to a stimulus in your environment, and that helps you to survive because you're not burning your hand off. A shark smells blood in the water. That'll give it energy. That helps it to survive. Okay, in its environment. Why is it critical for an organism to respond to its environment, to a stimulus in its environment? Why? That's right. Survival. If you can't survive, you're dead, and then your species is going to be gone, and then you're not a living species. So in order you have to be able to react to a stimulus in your environment. Even plants react to stimuli in your environment. They slightly will adapt themselves for rain, for sun. And if they can't do that and they don't have the right leaf adaptations, if they have, not enough waxy coating on them and they're a desert plant, they're dead. They're not going to survive there. So the next one is requires energy and materials, and energy is required for a life process called metabolism. You've probably heard of metabolism, how fast your metabolism, how slow. It's basically how quickly you break down sugars to release energy. Taking in materials like glucose, sugar, breaking it down through a series of reactions to release energy. In this classroom, energy is going to be called ATP. ATP. I'm going to make you memorize that. We're going to use it all year long. It's the chemical that is in your body that the bonds break and then you release energy from it. Adenosine triphosphate. Google it. So there's two types of energy in the natural world. There's kinetic and then there's potential. What's the difference between kinetic and potential energy? That's right. Kinetic energy is the energy of movement. Potential energy is stored energy. So there's different ways that organisms can obtain this energy, and we're going to place these into your binder, your little book that I'm going to have you bring in. So we're going to come back to that later. So seventh characteristic of life is maintaining homeostasis, internal balance, where you are regulating it and your body is doing it. You don't usually have to do much to keep homeostasis, and if you're out of homeostasis, you could die. So you put a coat on when you're cold so that you don't freeze to death. Your body sweats to cool you down when you're hot. If you have a body temperature that's high, like right now with coronavirus, it's because you have a virus, which your body is trying to then warm yourself up by releasing all of your antibodies to try and attack white cells. And it raises your body temperature when it's releasing and doing all this extra work. It's like you running a marathon. Your internal environment's running a marathon and your body temperature goes up. And it's bad. Water in your body, like dehydration. You'll start to get a headache. You might, your veins might start to like disappear and you can pinch your skin. Calcium amounts. If you're low in calcium, you'll start to have muscle cramps. When you're hungry, your belly is like starting to, growl. If you're over full, your belly gets bloated and you feel disgusting. Digestion, oh my gosh, I can't even go into that one. The gurgles and the burbles and yuck, yuck, yuck. So that's maintaining homeostasis. It's all internal, okay? And then last but not least is the ability to change over time and adapt to the environment. And so adaptations are inherited characteristics that originally arise by the random mutations. So you inherit these mutations, and then the mutations cause changes to that creature's body. And if it's favorable, the organism would undergo survival of the fittest, meaning that you would survive because you are fittest. Fittest means the ability to, that's right, reproduce. And if you reproduce, then you have more babies, and those babies should be carrying your genes. Therefore, you would see more of those adaptations in that species over time. Anteaters' noses could get longer over time if they get longer and they're more successful at finding ants. If the anteater's nose gets short and it's not successful at getting the ants, then that species wouldn't get enough ants, and then that species wouldn't have energy to reproduce. Yeah, think about it. There's some other examples, which again we'll talk about in class. So does anyone know who the biggest contributor to this area of research is? That's the adapt and change. That's the survival of the fittest. All right, so those were the 8 characteristics of life. If you look behind me, woo, I have a word wall up, and you can see them all up there, organized. If you want to take a, look at that, you can. We're going to copy it down into your little books that we're going to have in class, which are mostly going to be for vocabulary. All right, I will see you next time for scientific method.